Leica M11. I think this is a unique review of that camera on the internet because like there are videos about it, of course, but I haven't seen like a full-blown review of that camera. So let's get right into it. Build quality. Build quality is Leica. It's like basically metal piece of like camera and it's a classic Leica experience. This knob to change, you know, like ISO value is metal and you have to click it up to change the value, and this is so analog. I knew that knobs from many analog cameras from the past. Same goes to like this like lever to release the battery. It's amazing because it's metal and it also works like this, you know, like levers to open the doors to change film in old classic film cameras. So build quality is great. Ergonomics, there's not much to say about ergonomics. You know, this thumbnail support, this, you know, thumb support on the back helps a lot. Grip is pretty shallow, but basically that's not what Leica is about. It's a classic Leica design, so you either like it or you don't like it. So so that's what it is, and there's nothing to discuss here. There are some, however, there are some decisions from the designers of that camera that are controversial, I would say. First one is the battery. So you need to first release this lever to release the battery, but you also have to click and the battery goes out. So there are two moves to release the battery. It's kind of normal, and I understand the decision that they basically didn't want the battery to drop on the floor. But in case of a silver version, this battery from the bottom is like plastic, while rest is metal. So plastic gets a lot of scratches easily and fast, while metal does not. So it doesn't look great. I think there's some room for improvement, specifically at this price point, that this bottom of the battery maybe should be metal, but that's just aluminum. But that's just my opinion. I don't know if you agree with that or not. And there's one more. There's a USB-C port that you may actually want to use. That is actually a great solution because you have internal 64 gigabytes of memory, so you don't actually need an SD card if you want to shoot photos with that camera. But that port is like back in the days in old Apple mouse. You remember Apple mouse, right? I don't use it anymore, but some of you maybe do like it. So it used to be charged from the bottom. So the same here, the port is on the bottom. So basically while you are transferring the photos or charging the camera, you cannot put it like, you know, in this position. You have to flip it. So I understand why this decision has been made here, because like they wanted to probably avoid any ports on the sides, any like, you know, like extra thing there. So they wanted to keep it minimalistic, and they achieved that purpose. But that's just controversial. But in other case, like Leica is ergonomically fine. I like it, and if you like classic camera look and classic camera design, this camera is just awesome. Now let's talk about the performance of this camera, because this is to me the most important part here. So the sensor generally performs very well. It has pretty nice dynamic range and nice colors. I won't be talking about these analog colors and stuff because I like the colors that this camera produces, but it's different from, for example, SL3 or generally Panasonic counterparts, where you have a color science that is designed to be faithful. And actually, if you want the most faithful colors of your straight from the camera, Panasonic like S5 Mark II or Leica SL3 are the best choices out there. Leica M11 is not designed for that. It's a special camera that is the closest experience possible in digital world to the analog camera. So the colors are not very faithful. I like them. They are maybe a little too magenta for me, but that's just my opinion. But that's nothing like, you know, to hold on. It's generally a very pleasant image that comes out of this camera, and I like the lenses that you have, you know, the selection of lenses you have there to work with. First of all, you have very expensive Leica lenses. I used the 35, not APO, but the 35 f2 lens, and it produces like very nice classic, a little vintage bokeh. It looks good. Now, let's talk about the specifics. And of course, you have 7 artisans, very good lenses, and much, much cheaper. So let's talk about specifics. This camera is unique not only because it does have a built-in 64 gigs of internal memory, but it can produce actually 3 different resolution of images from the same sensor with full readout. So you have, I need to just read it because I never remember those numbers. There's LDNG 60.3 megapixels, there's MDNG 36.5 megapixel, and there's SDNG 18.4 megapixel. So basically all those images will get like full sensor readout. So there's no crop, no cheating there. It's just full-blown raw. And what is amazing about it, that actually if you want to gain some dynamic range, you can see for yourself that there is a gain in dynamic range when you drop down this resolution. It's not huge, but there is a drop. The other thing, you can optimize your production. So if you need these details, if you need 60 megapixels, you can go all out to 60 megapixels. But if you are fine like me with 36 megapixels, you can just drop down this resolution. You gain some extra dynamic range, you gain some low light performance, and you don't have to change your SD cards that fast, or you don't run out of this internal space that fast. So that's, I think, awesome performance here. And if we are talking about low light performance, this camera generally performs pretty well, pretty decent in low light. It's not the master of low light because it would be like, you would need a different sensor here. But if you drop down this resolution again, maybe to this 18.4, you can have pretty decent performance in low light. And you can see some gains when it comes to this lower resolution in noise. So the noise is less. Those are small differences, but those are noticeable differences, and I want you to know about that. The other thing that I didn't mention before, and I didn't see anybody mention before in like those Leica reviews or Leica related videos, because actually I didn't find any like full-blown review, is that Leica does have a very good software that connects this camera with, specifically, it's more Apple oriented, specifically with Apple devices. I think it works with Windows. I didn't test because I have both Windows and Apple devices, but I traveled with Apple device, so that's what I tested. And actually this this software that Leica developed, it's Photos, I don't remember that. I'll write it down in the description below, but actually works. And in opposite to Sony, Canon, Panasonic, all these pieces of software have some flaws, and in case of Leica, it works pretty good. But now let's talk about bad things. Bad things to me is that software of this camera, which is to me a little unacceptable at this price point, is not very stable. I know that Leica has received some software upgrades, firmware upgrades there, and this is great, but you can still have issues with basically this camera freezing, which is not ideal because you have to basically take out the battery, put it back, and then a camera starts again. Then when you run out of space on SD card, it will ask you, would you like to use internal memory? And you say yes, and that's what you expect to not pop up again. But after restart, camera will ask you again, and that's very annoying. I know that it's easy to iron it out in software updates. Maybe since I recorded that video, you will already report in the comments below. Please do if you find it not valid anymore, so that this camera have received some updates and those problems are gone. But those are things that you would expect from such a camera to work perfectly. Like that you turn it on, it's fast because there's no electronics, there's no image stabilization, autofocus system or anything like that. You just have a simple to use digital camera that takes pictures and takes very good pictures. So my point here is that if you guys from Leica are listening, like, please work on this software so that it can work flawlessly. So those are the downsides. The last downside I want to mention, of course, is price. I mean, I understand there's nothing like that on the market, and this is Leica, so you pay for the legend, you pay for something unique because you have rangefinder camera, and this rangefinder thing actually is a unique way to sharpen your images manually, and it's actually very precise. It's actually very nice to work with. Rangefinder is a very good tool to have the sharpness where you want it to be. And of course, you can sharpen, like you can use focus peaking, and you can set your focus on the screen on like live view in live view mode. And live view mode, by the way, is image stabilized, but the image is not stabilized itself. Like the image you capture is not stabilized. So basically, there are some amazing features there that you won't find on other cameras. However, I would love to see Leica dropping these prices a little bit, because this price point is really high. And I'm mentioning that not to say that it's not worth it. It's the opposite. I fell in love with this camera, walking like on the streets of New York with Leica camera, with this legend in your hand, and with this completely different idea of a camera from modern cameras with 4K, 8K, with image stabilization, super fast and responsive autofocus system, etc., etc. You get a very simple, very minimalistic camera, and it's a great experience to refresh your love for photography. And I did like the experience. I do like the images that come out of this camera. They are special. And the way you approach these images is special. So I would love to have one, because I had it borrowed from Leica themselves. So I would love to have one of those cameras for myself, but the price point is very high. So I would really wish that they will cut the price a little bit, specifically maybe for older models that are still very good and still very unique in their design and idea. And I do understand that they have no competition in that specific niche, which is very small, but there is a client for that. Apparently, and there's a lot of people that love that camera. And the fact itself that, like in some places in New York, some people told me like, oh, you have a cool camera. I'm like, I know, it's Leica, so it is cool, and it looks different. It does have this history in it, so it's a wonderful experience. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my review, and I hope you found it informative and I don't know, entertaining. If yes, please don't forget to subscribe, leave thumbs up, leave comments below. I'll try to answer them all, and I see you guys in the next recording. Cheers.